The Thunderdome Puckcast is back. It's your host Moose. Sorry for the long layoff, but we are back with a vengeance in 2020. In today's episode, we'll check in with the Atlantic Division, see how everyone's doing statistics wise and standings wise, see where the Bolts measure up as they get into the second half of the season. Kind of look at 2019, basically all the games that we missed since I guess the foreign series, or the series where we were over in Sweden. Uh, Basically haven't covered the Lightning since then, so we'll take a look at how we've performed in November and December. Go over our 2019 surprises and disappointments for this so far in this season, and then of course we're going to try our best to answer the question: have we righted the ship? Are the Bolts back? All this and more on episode 8 of the Thunderdome Puckcast. I know it's been a long time, but let's hit that intro. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Thunderdome Puckcast. Your host, Moose. Hope you're doing well. It's been, almost 2 months since the last episode of Thunderdome Puckcast. Couple of reasons for that. First and foremost, I've been so sad about how the Lightning have been playing at least through November and December. So it was kind of tough to motivate myself, especially doing so many other shows as well with my co-host Emrod on Bucking Hangover, and the Bucks also taking bits of my soul as well this season, really struggling towards the end. Along with the $10 Sports, where we've really hit it off with our gambling show. We'll get some hockey gambling action going on in the second half of the $10 Sports season getting into 2020. We'll cover some hockey and basketball, but reason for my absence, just a lot of stuff personally at work, a lot of stuff going on with the other shows, but we're ready to go. We're committed to weekend episodes moving forward every week, kind of summarizing how we've done. This is our first Sunday episode in a while. So again, thank you guys for listening on podcast platforms, which are now available on your usual podcast platforms: Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, and Spotify as well. Just search for Thunderdome Puckcast. We should be working on uploading the Thunderdome Puckcast later today, so you'll actually get all first 7 episodes and episode 8 all in one lump sum, and we'll be uploading those as we move forward. So welcome to the Thunderdome Puckcast. If you're a new listener, basically as part of the Balls, Brews, and Bros network, it's kind of our hockey / lightning focused podcast, a little bit of a solo project for me, your host Moose. We have 2 other shows as part of the network so far. The Bucking Hangover, our Buccaneers reaction show, as well as $10 Sports, our sports gambling show. Last night we announced a new show focused on the XFL and the Tampa Bay Vipers, the Viper's Nest. So we're getting the graphics and everything ready for that. Should be off the ground in the next few weeks. So keep in tune for that. Of course, you can always watch our pre-recorded live shows on YouTube at our YouTube channel at Balls, Brews, and Bros. At Balls, Brews, and Bros is our YouTube channel. And you can always catch me on Twitter at $10 Sports. Feel free to message me directly if you agree or don't agree with my hot Lightning takes. I should be more committed now as the football season winds down to watching more Lightning games this season. I am paying for the Lightning package on NHL.tv, so I should take advantage of that. So, today's show, we're going to cover the Atlantic Division. So let's start with checking in on the standings of the Atlantic Division, and we'll switch over back and forth to our second screen with the division standings. But so how have we done since we last left you in the global series, not the foreign series, the global series over in Sweden? Lightning actually have played okay, and it wasn't really till I put pen to paper where, we've been okay, and I've read a lot of articles. Raw Charge has put out some great analytics, and a few other commenters and Twitter accounts that I follow that are Lightning focused, Bolts Jolts, just to name a few. Some really interesting statistics on why we're struggling, and I think we'll talk about that as we get to answering the question, have we righted the ship? And we'll probably touch on a few of those in the 2019 surprises and disappointments. But let's look at where we're at so far. Let's get the second screen going here, and you'll see me over here to your left. Not a surprise, Boston's still at the top. They've basically led the division since the very beginning. I think what the big surprise, though, is Toronto responding to the firing of Babcock. I mean, Toronto was looking down and out towards the beginning of the year. They were, if you remember our early shows, they were in fifth, sixth place. Of course, with the Senators and Red Wings kind of taking up the rear pretty religiously there. But they have made a push, and they right now only 6 points behind the Bruins in the standings for the Atlantic Division. And even when you're looking at the Eastern Conference, they're still third. Of course, Washington leading the league overall with 61 points, but 53 is good enough for third. It looks like, or fourth in the Eastern Division, in the Eastern Conference, and second in our division. As you're looking here, Bolts coming up with 50 points, starting to make some distance between them and Florida and Buffalo. For me, I think Buffalo's been a little bit of a disappointment. They had a hot start. I was really excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, one of my predictions is coming true. We're still good. We are still good. We've basically called the first 5 teams here so far halfway through the season, getting into game 42 for a few of these teams. We called Buffalo as a surprise contender for getting into the playoffs this year. Right now, I think they're a few points out with the Metro division being so strong. But if you remember, one of our bold predictions or hot takes could be that we finally see that Tampa Florida the playoff matchup. I'm thinking this might be the year that it happens. I don't think the Bolts are going to catch Boston unless we go on a tear. We're in the middle of a tear right now. 6 wins in a row with Toronto. Look at that. Their last 10, 9-0-1, which is a big, big indicator of their response over the last month and a half since Babcock has been fired. 9-0-1, playing well at home. That's all you could ask for. And who's even coaching them? They think they have someone in interim. Got to be a coach of the year candidate if they make the playoffs, which it looks like they're in position to do so. Austin Matthews playing well as well. They're getting some pretty decent goaltending. We'll look at those stats in a moment. But again, here are your standings. Not a surprise with Detroit at the bottom. Lightning kind of struggling with Detroit the other day. I believe Curtis McElhinney started that one with a 2-1 win about a week or so ago against the Red Wings. And then Ottawa's been really pesky this year. And the Bolts have the Bolts played their 4 games against them this year already. Hopefully we don't have to see them anymore, because they always give us trouble. We finally had a nice comeback win last night against them. That was a back and forth game. I was switching between that and the New England Patriots Titans game. Both games are really entertaining, but I was also keeping track of my phone, and when they went down, I was like, no, what's going on? And thankfully, Johnson with the last minute winner and then an empty netter to get us to 5-3 last night for a 6th win in a row. So I don't think Ottawa's quite there. I think they're stuck in the basement. Detroit's just really, really bad. I think that's Stevie Y's strategy of trying to stockpile some picks and maybe start reconstructing like he did with Tampa. Tampa was in a pretty bad spot when he took over as GM and when Vinnick took over as owner. So don't expect too much from them. Montreal, I think we called them right in the 6th spot, and that's where they're at. I think that's just where they're at. I think they're taking a risk with Ilya Kovalchuk. Really nothing to lose, right? Go ahead and bring him in. The Russian disappointment he's been. Where was he even playing this year? Anaheim? Or the Kings? I don't even remember where he was. He was finally optioned down and now ending up with a pretty cheap contract on the Montreal Canadiens. I guess we'll see how that goes for him. Maybe they get some offense going. They're pretty even on the goal differential. They're not too far behind in terms of goals per game. We'll look at those statistics as well, which is some of the reason why maybe the Lightning haven't been performing well, at least through the middle of November and some of December. Again, not surprised at Buffalo. Florida's been playing pretty strong, and good goal differential, especially with the addition of Bobrovsky. And I just don't think anyone's catching Boston this year. Question for my Tampa people: is Sonny's still a thing? I was in Tampa and I couldn't make it to the Panthers game over Christmas break. My two go-to Sonny's barbecue locations were closed. And I know I see the ad here. Where can I find a Sonny's the next time I'm in Tampa? Please let me know if in the comments if you're a Tampa dweller, know where we can find a Sonny's. So those are your standings. Let's look at the statistics, because I think that does a better job at telling the story of what's going on here. And I probably have to go to NHL.com to get the statistics for the Atlantic. But let's look at the Bolts so far. Of course, our leading point getter, 43 points, had another point last night. Nikita Kucherov, which I think the big surprise here with Kuch is he's leading in the assist game this year. Last year he was dominating on the goal score sheet, of course, on his way to, and of course total points as well, on his way to 128, I think he had last year, right? Assist, what a great showing so far, leading the team. Oh, actually, Victor took over last night. 30 assists for Victor, 29 still for Nikita Kucherov. A little bit down on the goal scoring this year, hoping he can eclipse 30 goals as we get going this year. I think he's missed a few games, it seems. Stamkos as well, down a few games. He was leading most of our categories, if you remember back in episode 6, episode 7. So in that month and a half layoff we've had with our show, still third in points. Want to talk about one of our surprises, and we'll keep it till we get to that segment. Alex Killorn, 16 and 19. Well, getting close to some career high numbers for him. So I think where we're really struggling is our expected goals per game maybe isn't as high, but we're certainly struggling on the back end in terms of solid goaltending. Vasi's had his moments of brilliance, and even McElhinney to a degree. But again, 2.83 goals against average, that's rough. I mean, 9.09 is okay. You want to be, I think you got to be saving 92+% of your shots. Though we've seen this improve, I think if we look at the stats on at the scrolling bottom for episode 7, I think Vasi was at .899 and Curtis was just eclipsing 90%. So we've been trending up at least, which is great. And goals against average has been coming down. I think Vasi was in the 3s even. So he's bringing it down to 283. Curtis was maybe 2.5, 2.6. And that has been coming down as well. I think we've been playing a little bit better defensively. And some of the statistics there show that our quality shots given up has been relatively high in some of the reading I've done, thanks to some of our Lightning bloggers out there, really putting together the statistics to get to the bottom of the story. Did we suck, or did we just overperform, and we're measuring ourselves against the 2018-2019 Bolts versus where we should be performing normally? And I think the gap has been really that our expected goals given up has been higher than usual. And once we pull up the NHL stats, we'll take a quicker look at that. So let's go ahead and pull up the NHL stats. And I wanted to highlight some of the Lightning gifts I got for Christmas. So if you're ever shopping for me for Christmas, or you want to show appreciation to your host, anything Lightning theme would be amazing. Let's pull up those NHL stats. Should have had it ready. This was a great gift right here. I don't know if this was one of our first, and excuse the glare, going into the man cave, 2019-2020 signed poster or picture, framed picture panorama, if you will, of the Amalie Arena, which I was really excited about. So great gift from the fiance. Thank you very much. That'll get going right. Probably put it on the Lightning wall, which you can't. It's off camera. I might have to do a tour of the man cave one of these days. Then, of course, this great new, good-fitting Kucherov jersey. Really excited about that. Getting the Kucherov jersey. Of course, I've got the tag still I've got the tag still, just in case a trade ever happens. I'm just kidding. Haven't just taken them off. So just in case the Cooch trade happens, I can get that returned. Just kidding, just kidding. All right, we've got the and I got my off camera. I've got my Kucherov puck holder. So now we just got to get the Kucherov puck to put that in. So let's take a look at the Atlantic Division, which I think it'll let me do it by Atlantic Division, shouldn't it? Usually does. Well, it's going by team. Well, that's fine. There we go. We got divisions now. Oh, let's take a look anyway at the player summary. Let's go by points here. Let's bring it back up for you. Ooh, 0 points. Let's put that to, of course, Connor McDavid leading the way. David Pastrnak has had an excellent year. 31 and 30, as even as you can get. So he should be among the goal leaders and really behind some of Boston's great success. Right behind him, Marchand. Oh my gosh. I didn't realize he was having that great of a year as well. 60 points for him. Really kind of, numbers that look like the Tampa Bay Lightning numbers last year with Cooch. Wow, 2 players at 60 on pace to potentially get into the 120s. That's phenomenal. Pastrnak and Marchand, I mean, that's an unstoppable line there. Huberdeau for Florida having a great year, and Eichel as well. Got to go down a little bit. Barkov and Cooch is the first Lightning representative, 16 in points in the league. When you're looking at assists, we got to have McDavid, of course, leading. Hedman up in the top 10 with 30 points. And a couple of Atlantic folks in there. Barkov in there. Huberdeau almost leading the league in assists. And there he is, the Rat. Brad Marchand, third in assists. Let's look at goals really quick. Pastrnak, like we thought, was leading the league. And there he is, Austin Matthews. We got the top in our division. We have the top 3 goal scorers in the league. That is some tough competition in the Atlantic this year. Got to drop down a little bit to get to the next one. Actually, Anthony Duclair with 21, and there's the Rat. Brad Marchand with 20 again in our division. And Pajot. Lightning leaders, I think, are in the 15s. I think Killorn scored last night to get to 16, and Pointer as well. So Pointer should be at 16, and so is Killorn, right? So in terms of goal scoring, maybe a little bit more evenly distributed this year for the Lightning instead of Cooch scoring what seemed to be every other goal for us like he did last year. Let's see the goaltending stats, which I think will also tell a pretty interesting story. I'm ashamed. They used to be able to do it by division because that's how I would do the last few reports on our podcast, but for some reason it just isn't configuring that way. But not surprisingly, Jordan Binnington for the Blues is up top again. But I think the biggest story so far is when you're looking in terms of wins, Frederik Andersen with a big 21 pulling the lion's share of work for the Toronto Maple Leafs, having a pretty solid season. He's not leading the league in save percentage or goals against average by any means, but the Toronto Maple Leafs are scoring goals, and they're just playing so much better in front of them after the firing of Mike Babcock. So let's take a look at our save percentage leaders. And we'll have to, let me filter by minimum games played here. Looks like Tristan Jarry is taking the lion's share of the work in Pittsburgh. How much is he splitting time with Murray? It's interesting, but 936 is what you're looking for at Jarry here. And 194 goals against average, which my guess is that's leading in terms of players over with the applicable number of games. 3 shutouts for him as well. So Jerry's your guy. Darcy Kemper's having a great season out in Arizona. how is Tuca doing? The Tuca's behind some of that success as well in Boston. Any other high performers in our division? Goaltending's been, other than Frederick Anderson leading the league in wins, and again that has to do with the goal scoring in Toronto. Uh, Kind of been a down year for goaltending in the Atlantic Division. You're not seeing Carey Price's name anywhere up here. Here's Vassy down to 283 to 909, so almost getting to the 91% that we're needing him at. Yeah, here's Matt Murray. He's kind of come down, kind of been relegated to backup status. He's under 90% and close to 3 goals against. We're looking at Pittsburgh. Well, let me find some Atlantic Division leaders. I didn't see Bobrovsky in the top 10, which was a little surprising for me. Maybe I'm just missing him. I've got to be missing Bobrovsky because I feel that he's been having a solid season, but then again, I haven't really heard his name too much. You guys remember Pavel Francouz with Colorado and how I just couldn't believe how well he's been playing. That has been maintained, and he's played 17 games for the Avalanche this year, who are playing pretty well. 2.5 goals against average, and again, getting through that magic 93% in terms of save percentage that we want to see. Where? Am I just missing? Maybe Bobrovsky's not having a solid season as I thought he was. Holtby's definitely having kind of an interesting season as well. Oh, that's really interesting. I did giving up almost 3 goals a game, even though the Capitals are far and away the best team in the league this year so far. So let's look at our team standings, just so we can see where we rank power play, penalty kill wise, as well as generally in the league. When you're looking at points, at least Lightning ranked right now right at 50 points. About tied for about 11th in the league or so. But I think one of the statistics you always want to look for is goals for per games played, right? And the Lightning actually third. So we've seen this skyrocket over the last few weeks, and we're pretty much firmly where we expect to be in terms of goal scoring. We talked about some of the challenges, and as we transition here into the 2019 in review, and we'll hop back and forth from the second screen. Lightning goal expectations in terms of what was expected to be scored, I mean, well in line into expectations when you're looking at analysis and data, projecting statistics and how our performance should be. I mean, we're well in line in terms of goals that we should score. Last year, I think, slight aberration. We were closer to 4 goals per game for a good chunk of that year. But I think where we might see the discrepancy is goals against per game played, and here are some of the basement dwellers. Lightning are 14th in goals given up per game played at 3.1. You'll see really the best performing team that's in a playoff position right now, the Panthers at 3.34, and they've really only gotten away with it because their goal scoring is right up there, pretty near the Lightning at 3.51. So this has really been what the difference is, and let me get that on the screen here where we're at 14th. This has really been what the difference has been this year, is this 3.1 goals against, where last year Vasilevsky had a Vezina year where we were closer to 2.3 when you look at backup goalie's numbers, along with his name's escaping me and he played so well, Louis Domingue's numbers along with Vasilevsky. So I think, did Louis Domingue overplay last year or over deliver last year? Absolutely. And I think your usual backup goaltenders numbers are going to be somewhere between Louis Domingue's performance and what Curtis is giving us right now. But should this number just even go down to what are the leaders doing right now? Now 2.43 for Dallas. Ben Bishop's played magnificent behind that team. Looked great in the Winter Classic. Even if we get it down to 2.71, and and we'd be scoring what 3.50. Here are the Capitals, right? Capitals at 2.93 and they're 3.5 in terms of goals for a game. Capitals are number one in the league, of course. So that's the difference. Just that half a goal a game. Not even that. Where were we now? 3.1, 0.2 goals a game. I think really makes a difference in terms of where we are in the standings. And we're starting to get it together. I think we should run the numbers for the past month, a month and a half, where we've really seen that improvement, and really we should be in good position. So let's look at the schedule since we last left you, and we'll kind of go over briefly, or here in January. Last left you after our Rangers game, big 9-3 win over the Rangers, and then sweeping Buffalo over in Sweden. We were really thinking that we righted the ship. Kind of a tough game against Winnipeg. Land the defending Stanley Cup champions who are playing well. Two losses back to back. Then win against a bad Chicago team, a bad Anaheim team. Taking care of business against Buffalo. Struggling again against the Blues. Capitals seem to have our number. Probably a game we should have won against Carolina. November 6-5-1, right? So that's good for 13 points out of a possible, what is that, 12, 24, 13 on 24. Not great in terms of point efficiency. But December is really where we turned it on. Really going 9-3-1. So, we talked about beating a Boston Bruins team that's going to lead the division and probably finish number one in our division this year. Then we have some not puzzling, but just solid losses against the Islanders. They just outplay us, and we have these games where we're sleepwalking through games, or maybe we're just that outclassed by the Islanders, which I don't particularly believe. But I don't know. And then we can't solve the Capitals. Hopefully we're done playing them for the year, because a quick 0-3 against the Capitals, not doing well. I think one of the most puzzling losses, though, was the loss against the Minnesota Wild, who at that point were right down there with Ottawa, Detroit, and New Jersey as one of the worst teams in the league. Kind of have a head scratcher against the Wild early December. However, really only going 9-3-1 in December, really maximizing our points here. What's that? 13, so out of 26, 19 out of 26 points. Definitely a better points percentage for the month. And then we've been rolling since the loss to Washington, which I hope has been a kind of a season changer there, kind of getting our bearings together. Since then, though, we've won 8 out of the last 9, starting with a big steamrolling of Florida, Christmas break, and then taking care of business against Montreal. Weird game against Detroit with only a 2-1 win. And, of course, defeating Buffalo on New Year's Eve. Taking care of the Canadians and beating Ottawa last night in a comeback win in the third period. So, got the Hurricanes coming up, as well as a couple games against Vancouver and a really, really good Arizona Coyotes team this year. And then on the road again to Philadelphia, who's in fighting for playoff positioning this year. So, the 2019 surprises and disappointments for me so far. You'll see my surprises up this side up top, and then disappointments right here below. So we'll kind of go through them. Number one big surprise has been the sustainability of Shattenkirk's play has been just great. I think you come onto a new team. He had something to prove after being bought out. I think he might have been bought out multiple times. He's done a phenomenal job. I think he's third or fourth in points. Let me pull up the Lightning specific statistics. As I was preparing for the show last night, I was just really excited to see Shattenkirk so high. Sixth or seventh in points, 26 points through 40 games for Kevin Shattenkirk. And I don't even think he's playing top D minutes right now. Let's see how many minutes he's averaging so far this year. They don't show his minutes played. but time on ice is not in the 20s. We have his last five, and we could really look at his other game logs. But it's really 18, 17 minutes. He's not getting Hetty's time, or McDonough's time, who went down with an injury last night, by the way. So, again, really impressive showing by Shattenkirk. And for me, he's been a surprise, at least sustaining the play that he's had since the beginning. I love the signing when we did it over the summer. Great signing. Another big surprise for me, and I'm just so happy to see it. And we know defensemen are a long term project, and we got to stay committed. We saw it with Victor. I was one of Victor's biggest haters at the beginning, until I understood what his game was, and I think we're seeing that with Sergey right now. Sergachev is my number two big surprise of the year, just playing absolutely wonderful. Being gonna be forced to play probably some first pairing minutes now with McDonough's status unknown, and McDonough kind of having a little bit of a down year, and Sergachev's really had to step up through 40 games, 15 assists and 6 goals, which is really big. Does he lead our defenseman? He might be. Hedman with 9, Shaddy with 7, and Sergachev with 6. I mean, 6 goals for a young defenseman. I will take that any day. Let's look at his ice time. I know it's had to have been trending upwards, and yeah, we see that the last 5 games, ice time trending upwards. 2020, a little bit of a slow game against Buffalo, but 24 minutes last night with McDonough being injured early, I think in the first or second period, perhaps. So I'm curious to see what his ice time does with McDonough's injury ending up being long term. So great surprise, young 21-year old defenseman. Happy to have him. I think that was a great trade, and probably one of Stevie Y's finest moves, securing Sergachev and moving on from Jonathan Duran. Third big surprise, I think, has been Kucherov's play in a good and bad way, right? So I think Kuch started off a little bit slow at the beginning of the year, really has come into his own, and I think I've been impressed by just the general lead on the assists. He's right behind Hedman in assists with 29, and he's in the top 15 in assists in the league. So I think Kuch's game has had to change a little bit, as it really seems that teams have been playing him differently, and it's taken a little bit for him to kind of move away from the score first mentality, and it's, honestly, I almost don't want to jinx it, but he's almost becoming a better two-way player instead of the run and gun focus on offense for him. So cheers to you, Cooch. Got your jersey, keep it going, and we appreciate the assists. So he should be on pace. We're about halfway through the season for us, so hopefully eclipsing 100 points. I think he's going to get hot here getting into January and February and the home stretch in March. So keep it going, Cooch. I think my number one, the biggest surprise, has been the play of Alexander Killorn. Absolutely amazing season that he's had so far. Could he get to 30 goals? I think we would be really excited if he got to 20 goals. I don't know if he's ever been a 20 goal scorer. Let's look at his past career. Yeah, 16 goals so far. Most goals that he's had in a season, 19, a few years ago, back in the 2016-2017 season. Looks like he is going to surpass that this year. Knock on wood, no jinx. Wouldn't be something if Killorn got to 30 goals. That would be amazing. And I know he was definitely one of those guys that we were talking about being on the bubble for, are we going to move on from him? Yeah, excuse my dog. I think she's detecting something she doesn't like. Is he someone that could be a trade deadline move, or someone we expose to the expansion draft this summer to Seattle? And he's making himself look like he's not. We can't lose him now. We've needed that grit from the third line, fourth line when he's asked to play down there, and he's been getting it. We need the production from our top three lines to be successful and to keep bumping up those goals per game. Again, Lightning third or fourth in the league right now in goals per game played. So Alex Galorn, cheers to you. I was totally wrong about you. I wanted to make sure that you had a pop up year, emerging year this year, and I'm glad you're having it. Uh, Moving on here to my disappointments of 2019. I think a really big disappointment has to be, and I don't want to get on young players because I know they're young, they're still developing, but I think there was a lot of excitement behind Connor Verhage making the team, kind of like Matthew Joseph made the team last year, and I think played pretty well, being able to make the team and stay on the team. And you'll see Matthew Joseph's picture there second. We'll get to him in a moment. The Connor Verhage's production actually scored last night, I believe. So he's up to 2 goals, and I think some credit to the coaching staff to continue to grind of him. I know he's been going through some healthy scratch periods, and with Stevens also drawing in and being bumped up from Syracuse, with Matthew Joseph being sent down. Where is Mitchell Stevens' total games here? 12 for Mitchell Stevens. Verhage's played in 27, so again, we talked about kind of in and out of the lineup, which may or may not be necessarily good for a young player. Any player doesn't like to be scratched, not have that schedule of knowing that they're going to be playing. Mitchell Stevens, 1 goal through 12 games. And of course, Carter Verhage, who we were all really excited when we always get excited when the young kids make the team. Only up to 3 goals, 3 and 5. So actually, he's been picking up lately a little bit of a -5 there. But again, that's playing. Sometimes when you play with that third or fourth line, you're going to be in the minuses. Great example of Cedric Paquette and Pat Maroon, who, by the way, still a big fan of the big rig. Pat Maroon, another fight last night. I think he had fights in back-to-back games. So I want to put Pat Maroon up there. Special mention, biggest surprise, great signing. Loved it when they made it. We'll see if we make the playoffs, how that translates into grit. And then we see Vasi here. Vasi here. If you're watching live on YouTube, Vasi, I'm trying to get points of Vasi. A little bit of a disappointment this year. I think he's been bouncing back. He shows those games of brilliance, and then he has kind of those lackluster, softy goal performances that really let the team down. I think we've been fortunate that we've been scoring a lot more in the past month and a half, but he's got to shore it up as we get into the playoffs. And Curtis McElhinney as well. I don't know if the team just plays a little bit differently in front of Curtis, where he's not getting the defensive support or the goal production. But we really need to shore down the goaltending, and I think Vasi's numbers have been a little bit disappointing. But I think that goes with being a top-tier goaltender and a young goaltender. I mean, Tuukka Rask had his down years, and you got to play through those. And there's times where the Bruins didn't make the playoffs, and we have to be patient. We can't just blow it all up. So that kind of gets us to our last quick talking point. Have the Lightning righted the ship? We were calling for John Cooper's head. Some of us, has the team stopped responding? What was wrong with Cooch? Is our goaltending going to get better? And I think the answer to those questions is we'll have to wait and see. It seems like in recent trends, the goaltending is there, and we should run the analytics to see what the goals against have been in the last maybe 10 to 15 games, especially in December, going 9-3-1, and so far 2-0 or 3-0 in January, which is great. Hopefully we have a hot January to keep us pushing up the standings and get us some cushion. But, I mean, I was one of them. I was really asking myself, is John Cooper the right guy? When you're in there for 8 years, is this the right guy to keep leading us or take us to the next level? You have a coach like Babcock getting fired. Laviolette's been on the hot seat in Nashville with their performance, and I think they're out of a playoff spot right now. And with all the talent they have, and looks like Pecorino's having a decent year, maybe not his best year. So there will be some coaching vacancies, and your household names will be available. Is John Cooper kind of next? Depending if the Lightning don't have success in the offseason, in this postseason, granted that they make the postseason, of course. Looks like they're well on their way now. And then I'd have to say that I think we have. I think he's getting the guys to respond. There's there's been a lot of talk of is he making the Lightning change their game, and I think my perspective is we have to change our game because our game didn't necessarily work once we got into the playoffs. It was great to have 120 whatever points as a team and 60 wins and whatnot, but maybe part of it is we ran into a hot Columbus team, but you got to play a complete game, all 200 feet on the ice. You can't just play for 2 periods. You got to play for 3, and that's really what we saw in the playoffs. Is Bobrovsky got hot, made some big saves, and we never recovered. I mean, he made some absolutely monumental saves to keep Columbus in the game in Game 1, and that was it. I mean, it's like we were shell shocked that we couldn't score at will like we did all season. So, have we righted the ship? I think the time will tell. Maybe we'll check in the next few weeks as we get to our Atlantic Division check-in, maybe towards the end of January again. Next week we'll do the Metropolitan Division and then go through the Western Conference divisions the next few episodes. So, as always, thank you so much for listening to the Thunderdome Puckcast, your source for Lightning analysis and hot takes. Promise you we'll be going to a weekly schedule now, probably dropping new episodes on Saturdays or Sundays, and we'll get everything going on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iHeartRadio for you to download while you drive. I know right now it's only on YouTube, which isn't great to do when you're driving. So don't watch or listen to us on YouTube unless you have you're paying for YouTube, of course. So we'll make sure that we get those on the streaming podcast applications for you. It's been Moose with the Thunderdome Puckcast. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week. Go Bolts. Have a great week. Take care.